In the beginning, before time took its first breath and before the stars scattered across the heavens, there was Nana Buluku, a name barely whispered in Western mythology books, yet one that resounds like thunder across the oral traditions of West Africa. Who was she? Why does her name invoke such sacred awe among those who remember? Nana Buluku is not just another goddess in a long list of ancient deities. She is the source, the primordial creator, the first divine breath from which all things came. In a universe teeming with myths of masculine sky gods and thundering fathers, her story remains uniquely quiet, sacred, and immense. And yet, it's this very quietness that demands our attention, like a whisper in the void that reshapes everything you thought you knew about beginnings. Unlike the gods of Olympus or the patriarchal creators of Abrahamic religions, Nana Buluku was beyond gender, beyond form, beyond beginning and end. Yet she is most often remembered as the mother, the womb of the universe. She birthed the celestial twins Mawu and Lisa, deities of the moon and sun, of feminine and masculine energies, of balance and duality. But then she stepped back. In an act both mysterious and divine, Nana Buluku removed herself from the ongoing affairs of creation, allowing her children to continue shaping the world. Who does that? A God who needs no control, a God who trusts what she created, a God so powerful her greatest act was to disappear, and in that disappearance, become eternal. This enigma is what makes Nana Buluku so fascinating. She is both present and absent, known and unknowable. She doesn't fit neatly into Western frameworks of gods that rule, punish, or demand worship. Instead, she emanates. She is the silence before sound, the stillness before motion, the void that cradles potential. And yet, she is revered across cultures not just for what she created, but for what she represents, the infinite mystery of origin, of divine femininity, and of the unknowable forces that breathe life into being. To understand Nana Buluku is to take a step back from our assumptions about divinity. It is to unlearn the loud, commanding gods and listen for the quiet, cosmic heartbeat of the First Mother. She predates mythology itself, residing in the ancient memories of the Fon, Ewe, and Yoruba peoples. And if you listen closely, through chants, drumbeats, dreams, and stories passed from grandmother to granddaughter, you can still hear her, a whisper, a pulse, a presence. So who is Nana Buluku? She is the beginning. Long before maps named borders and kingdoms rose and fell, the people of West Africa told stories. These were not just stories to pass time. They were the architecture of reality. They carried memory, identity, and an understanding of the cosmos passed from tongue to ear for thousands of years. And among the Fon and Ewe peoples, two of the oldest ethnic groups in the region, one name sat at the root of every cosmological tale: Nana Buluku. She was not just a deity in their belief system. She was the belief system, the origin, the spark, the very foundation upon which everything else rested. In the Fon tradition, Nana Buluku is credited with the creation of the universe itself. Before there was form, there was her. She existed in an unknowable space, creating not just the physical world, but the very laws that govern it. She birthed Mawu and Lisa, twin deities who would go on to shape the day and night, the sun and moon, the masculine and feminine. Mawu, often depicted as the moon, was the cool, calm, nurturing force. Lisa, the sun, was the heat, the energy, the drive. But both were merely expressions of Nana Buluku's original divinity. They did not exist independently. They were pieces of a puzzle she had already solved. The Ewe tradition echoes many of the same themes. with subtle differences that highlight the rich diversity of African oral traditions. Nana Buluku, in Ewe cosmology, is the source of spiritual order. She is sometimes described not as an individual being, but as a concept, a vast spiritual presence that gave rise to other gods, spirits, and cosmic forces. In this framing, she's not just the first god. She is the space from which the gods emerge. The empty canvas and the brush. The silence before the drumbeat. What's particularly profound about Nana Buluku's role is that after the creation she steps back. She doesn't demand worship, build temples, or hurl thunderbolts. Instead, she becomes a cosmic memory, ever present but rarely intervening. This departure from direct governance is crucial. It redefines what it means to be divine. The Western idea of gods who seek obedience or assert power is absent here. Nana Buluku creates and then lets creation unfold. It's an act of trust, of letting go, of divine confidence. Through Mawu and Lisa, Nana Buluku set the wheel of existence spinning. Mawu would later collaborate with the trickster Legba and the serpent deity Da to create the earth, humanity, and all living things. But none of this would have happened without Nana. Her absence is not a void. It's a space of freedom. She doesn't control the story. She wrote the prologue and then handed the pen to her children. The myth speaks volumes not only about cosmology, but about African philosophical concepts of balance, duality, and generative energy. The fact that Nana Buluku gave birth to a divine pair instead of a single god speaks to the African worldview where opposites coexist and complement each other. Feminine does not dominate masculine, nor vice versa. Both are essential halves of a whole. In Nana's myth, balance is not something to be achieved. It is something built into the structure of the cosmos itself. For the Fon and Ewe, Nana Buluku remains sacred not because she demands to be, but because her very existence is the reason there is anything at all. She is the ground underfoot, the sky overhead, the wind in the trees, and the rhythm of the drum. In ceremonies, her name is sometimes invoked in reverent tones, as if merely saying it calls the ancestors to listen, and maybe it does. After all, when a being exists before time, what is distance? What is silence? Her story is a mirror reflecting the values of the cultures who carry it. Reverence for creation, a deep trust in generative processes, and a profound respect for the unseen. Nana Buluku isn't a queen on a throne. She's the reason the throne exists, the reason the idea of a throne even occurred. And in that myth passed through generations by firelight, by drumbeat, by prayer, we find a story not just about how the world began, but why it matters. Because before anything was, there was her, and from her came everything. To understand the role of Nana Buluku as a creator is to enter a sacred realm where divinity is not thunderous, not loud, not ruled by command or conquest, but deeply intentional, subtle, and immense. Unlike many creator gods in global mythologies who actively shape the world, govern human affairs, or wield power through direct intervention, Nana Buluku operates differently. She is the architect who designs the cosmos, sets it in motion, and then steps back, not out of indifference, but out of profound trust in the order she initiated. Her decision to recede from the ongoing narrative of creation is perhaps the most radical and defining aspect of her divinity. It's a paradox that confounds modern understanding. How can a god create everything and yet remain invisible? But in Nana Buluku's silence lies her genius. In many African cosmologies, including the Fon and Yoruba, power is not always proven through presence. Sometimes true authority is shown in what one doesn't need to do. Nana Buluku does not hover over her creation with expectations. She doesn't interfere. She creates, and in doing so, she affirms that what she made is whole and complete. Her children, Mawu and Lisa, are given the tools to carry on the work. The system she births contains within it the wisdom and balance to evolve. It is a world infused with rhythm and reciprocity, where even chaos has a purpose. Compare this to other well-known creation myths: the Greek gods who constantly meddle in mortal affairs, the Old Testament God who floods the earth in frustration, or even the Hindu deities who destroy and recreate endlessly. Nana Buluku's act of stepping back places her in a realm beyond all of them. Not lesser, but deeper. She doesn't dominate, she trusts. Her power is not maintained through control, but through creation itself. And this withdrawal doesn't mean she disappears. On the contrary, her essence permeates everything. She becomes the background frequency of existence. In some spiritual traditions, she's likened to the night sky. You don't always notice it, but everything exists beneath its gaze. Her presence is felt in the structure of life itself. In breath, in birth, in the cycles of nature, in the invisible laws that keep the cosmos spinning in balance. She is the mother who does not hover, but whose teachings echo in every step her children take. This quiet omnipresence is echoed in her transformation over time, from an active creator into a kind of ancestral force, revered more as the origin than as a ruler. Among certain priesthoods and traditional spiritual leaders, Nana Buluku is not prayed to for favors or blessings. Instead, she is acknowledged with profound respect as the being who made all things possible. Offerings made in her name are acts of memory, not of petition. This reflects a spiritual maturity, a belief that the divine does not need to fix what was never broken. Her act of stepping back also speaks to a philosophy of empowerment. In handing the reins of cosmic balance to Mawu and Lisa, and by extension to other deities, spirits, and even humanity itself, she bestows responsibility. Creation is not static, it's a partnership. Her withdrawal is an invitation, a sacred calling to participate in the unfolding story of existence. She trusts the world enough to leave it in the hands of what she's made. And in doing so, she calls us to trust ourselves, to co-create with wisdom and care. This makes Nana Buluku more than just a mythic figure. She becomes a spiritual archetype, the divine origin who doesn't just birth life, but autonomy, agency, and balance. Her myth offers a template for divine leadership, rooted not in control, but in creative release. In this way, she's not only the first God, she's the first teacher, the first mother, the first giver of freedom, and perhaps that's why her presence continues to reverberate through so many spiritual systems, even in forms that no longer bear her name. Because the blueprint she left behind wasn't just for gods, it was for the universe itself. A cosmos rooted in duality and harmony, a spiritual order where presence can be felt without being seen, where creation is an act of love, not power, and where stepping back can be the most divine act of all. Across the continent, the name Nana Buluku might not appear in every temple or shrine, but her fingerprints are everywhere, etched into the bones of West African spiritual systems, carried in the songs of griots, and whispered in the rituals of ancestral reverence. Her presence lives on through the cosmologies that evolved from her creation. She may have stepped back, but she never vanished. The very structure of African spirituality bears the mark of her divine architecture. In Vodun, one of the oldest organized spiritual systems in West Africa, Nana Buluku is not typically worshipped directly, but she is acknowledged as the ultimate origin, the womb from which all spiritual energy emerged. Vodun places high emphasis on a pantheon of spirits called Loa or Vodun, many of whom trace their power back to Mawu Lisa. And yet, behind Mawu Lisa's duality, there is always Nana Buluku. She is not the deity called upon in daily practice, but rather the foundational force that makes the entire system possible. Her name is invoked more as a reverent reminder of beginning than as a present actor in ritual. In some traditions, she is so sacred, so ancient, that to name her is itself a prayer. Among the Yoruba people, who have deeply influenced Afro-diasporic religions across the world, the parallels are equally striking. Although Nana Buluku is not central to Yoruba cosmology in the same explicit way, her spirit echoes through the structure of Olodumare, the supreme, distant, and mostly unknowable creator, who, like Nana, entrusts the operation of the universe to a pantheon of divine agents called Orisha. Here too we see a divine figure who creates, sets balance into motion, and then steps back. The Orisha govern human affairs, embodying natural forces and moral principles, but they do so under the authority of a creator who is more essence than character. That essence, conceptually, is remarkably similar to Nana Buluku. This pattern of a creator stepping aside for a complex spiritual system to flourish recurs in multiple African traditions. It reflects a cultural worldview where power is diffused rather than centralized, where creation is a shared act, and where divine energy is embedded in every part of the natural world. Trees, rivers, storms, and ancestors are not seen as separate from the divine, but as vessels of it. The spirituality rooted in Nana Buluku's legacy is deeply animistic and communal, honoring the living, the dead, and the spirits in between. In ceremonies held across Benin, Togo, and Ghana, the influence of Nana Buluku is felt in the structure of the rituals themselves. Before any invocation of specific spirits, there is often a moment of silence, of grounding, of connecting with the primordial source. That is her. Her story is also kept alive in songs passed down through matrilineal lines, especially in communities where oral tradition is still a sacred practice. These songs rarely name her directly. Instead, they speak of the first, the one who was before, she who birthed the sky. This indirect reverence is not forgetfulness. It's cultural memory preserved in the most respectful form. As colonialism and missionary religions swept across Africa, many of these traditions were forced underground or rebranded through syncretism. Yet Nana Buluku endured. Even when her name was hidden, her framework of a supreme creative force who entrusts the world to her offspring remained intact. She became the sacred silence beneath the noise of history, and in doing so, she outlived empires, borders, and imposed beliefs. Today, among spiritual practitioners seeking to revive or reconnect with pre-colonial African spirituality, Nana Buluku represents more than just a goddess. She is a symbol of original power, of the divine feminine, of a spirituality that honors balance and interdependence. Her story is a thread that ties together the past and the present, reminding those who search for her that she never left. She was simply waiting, in the drum beats, in the rhythms of ritual, in the memories of elders, to be remembered again. To explore the religious legacy of Nana Buluku is not only to examine a set of beliefs, but to experience a worldview that is radically holistic. It is to enter a cosmology where the divine is not above the world, but within it, infused in every gesture, every breath, every ancestor's name. Her legacy lives not in temples of stone, but in the living traditions that carry her essence forward. Far from the shores of West Africa, across oceans churned by centuries of forced migration, Nana Buluku's spirit continued to travel, transformed, disguised, but never erased. In the diaspora, where African traditions were fragmented by enslavement and colonization, her influence endured in new forms, hidden within the folds of other spiritual systems. In Brazil, Cuba, Haiti, and the American South, the name Nana Buluku may not always be spoken, but the shape of her divinity remains, carried within Afro-diasporic religions that still echo her presence. In Brazil, among the practitioners of Candomblé, a faith born of Yoruba, Fon, and Bantu beliefs, blended with Catholic imagery, a deity named Nana is venerated. Nana is not exactly Nana Buluku, but she is her reflection, her echo across time. Nana in Candomblé is the oldest of the Orixás, associated with the earth, ancestors, the beginning of life, and the end. She is slow-moving, dignified, and powerful, representing wisdom, memory, and the cycle of return. Her color is deep purple, her element is mud, and she is often linked to the womb and the grave, to origins and endings. Her character bears the same sacred gravity as Nana Buluku, not a ruler but a presence so ancient and complete that she doesn't need to rule. She just is. Similarly, in Haitian Vodou, the divine feminine is preserved in powerful loa, such as Ayizan and Erzuli, who carry fragments of Nana's essence, nurturing, wise, elemental. These figures continue the pattern Nana established. Women as sacred forces, not just companions to male gods, but sovereign creators and protectors in their own right. In New Orleans and the American South, the traditions of hoodoo and root work also preserve whispers of Nana Buluku. Though often Christianized, many of these practices quietly center matriarchal authority, ancestral veneration, and earth-based power, concepts rooted in Nana's cosmology. The endurance of Nana Buluku across the diaspora reveals something powerful about cultural memory. Even when names are lost, essences remain. When enslaved Africans were forbidden to worship their deities, they adapted, pairing orishas and loa with Catholic saints, hiding their gods behind stained glass, embedding their rituals in Christian prayer. Nana Buluku didn't disappear. She moved underground. She became the shape behind the shape, a divine pattern that outlived the forces that tried to erase her. In the modern revival of African spirituality among diasporic communities, her name is being spoken again. Artists, scholars, and spiritual leaders are reclaiming her story as a way to reconnect with what was lost. For some, Nana Buluku represents more than just the past. She is a way forward, a return to spiritual roots that predate colonization. In her myth, they find the dignity of origin, the power of the feminine, and a divine model not built on domination, but on creation and trust. This resurgence isn't just about ritual, it's about identity. In a world that still often devalues Black history and Black spirituality, remembering Nana Buluku is a radical act. It's a reclamation of cosmology, of worldview, of self. Her myth gives voice to something many have felt but couldn't name, that the divine doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it listens, sometimes it births the world and then quietly lets it grow. And so Nana Buluku becomes not only a link to ancestral memory, but also a symbol of survival. She is the sacred that crossed the Atlantic. She is the echo that never faded. And even now, centuries after the ships sailed and the drums were silenced, her story is returning, reshaped, reinterpreted, but still glowing with the power of the First Mother. In every ceremony that honors the earth, every prayer to an ancient womb, every call to ancestral wisdom, she lives on. In the current spiritual landscape where identity and ancestry are at the center of a growing search for authenticity, Nana Buluku has emerged once again, not as a figure of mythology, but as a spiritual cornerstone for many. As Black communities around the world reclaim their heritage and reconnect with pre-colonial traditions, Nana Buluku stands at the crossroads of the ancient and the now. She is not returning because she was forgotten. She is being remembered because people are finally ready to listen in a different way. In African-centered spiritual movements, particularly among women and queer practitioners, Nana Buluku represents something deeply powerful, the divine as feminine, not as an accessory to male power, but as the origin of power itself. She is a mother not of subservience or duty, but of sovereignty. In her myth, she creates and then lets go, offering a model of motherhood that is empowering, liberating, and rooted in deep wisdom that resonates in a world where generational healing is becoming more important than ever, where people seek to break cycles and build anew. Spiritual collectives, especially in places like Ghana, Nigeria, and across the Black diaspora in the Americas and Europe, are invoking her name again in rituals, meditations, and community teachings. Her myth is being explored not only for its religious meaning, but for its psychological and philosophical depth. In the story of Nana Buluku, people find an invitation to reconnect with intuition, with nature, with the wisdom of the body, and with the unspoken memory passed down through bloodlines. Writers and scholars are also shining a spotlight on her story. Through essays, poetry, and performance, Nana Buluku is being reimagined not as a relic of African folklore, but as a living archetype of divine creation and cosmic wisdom. Her narrative offers an alternative to patriarchal spirituality and colonial frameworks that often exclude African voices. By placing her at the center, these thinkers are rebuilding a spiritual worldview that is whole, inclusive, and rooted in origin rather than hierarchy. In this age of digital rituals and global reconnecting, Nana Buluku's story has found new life through art, music, and storytelling platforms. Songs about her are emerging in neo-soul and Afro-spiritual genres. Visual artists are painting her image based on dreams and visions passed down through generations. She is no longer confined to the memory of the griots. She is becoming a symbol of ancestral healing and spiritual liberation. For many, invoking Nana Buluku is not about reviving a dead god. It is about remembering what was never truly gone. This act of spiritual reclamation isn't a trend. It's a response to centuries of erasure and fragmentation. Nana Buluku is not just being honored, she is being restored. In her name there is room for women to lead, for queer bodies to be sacred, for the earth to be respected as divine. She offers not a single path, but a foundation upon which many paths can stand. And in a world where so many are searching for meaning beyond dogma, her story is like water, a return to something essential, nourishing, and timeless. To reclaim Nana Buluku today is to light a torch in a long corridor of memory. It is to say, we remember, we honor the first, we honor the source, and in doing so, we find ourselves again. So why does Nana Buluku still matter today? Why does a figure so ancient, so elusive, continue to pull at the hearts of those searching for spiritual truth and cultural connection? Perhaps it's because she reminds us of something modern life tries to make us forget, that beginnings are sacred and that the divine doesn't need to shout to be heard. Nana Buluku is not just a character in a myth. She is the myth, the living pulse behind countless stories, beliefs, and worldviews that see creation not as a one-time event, but as an ongoing relationship. Her legacy invites us to consider a radical redefinition of power. In her, we see that real creation doesn't cling or control. It trusts. It sets life into motion and steps back with faith in what was born. Her story teaches us that balance isn't a goal to chase. It's the original state of things, a divine symmetry built into the structure of the world. And perhaps most importantly, Nana Buluku shows us that the divine is not somewhere far away in the clouds or in a book, but everywhere, in the rhythm of footsteps, in the hush of ancestors, in the soil, the stars, and the spaces between. In a time when so many are searching for meaning, for roots, for the quiet truth underneath the noise of history, Nana Buluku stands as a reminder that we come from something vast, wise, and deeply feminine. She is not a god of thunder or judgment. She is a god of breath, of origin, of infinite becoming. She does not demand followers, she invites memory. And so if you find yourself wondering where you came from, not just your bloodline but your spiritual root, listen, not with your ears but with something older. In the stillness, you may hear her, not in language but in presence, not in doctrine but in knowing, because Nana Buluku never needed temples. She needed remembrance, and now, more than ever, she is being remembered. If this story moved you, if it sparked something ancient in your bones, then like, share, and subscribe for more stories of forgotten gods, hidden truths, and the myths that still shape our world. Because the past isn't gone, it's waiting.